$1 million Bitcoin. $1 million Bitcoin. All right, Captain Clickbait. Let's see what you got here. I know. Apart from the clickbaity title, I hope that there's going to be some really valuable information for you in this video. I'm actually going to break down how Bitcoin could get to $1 million, what it would take, and my kind of overall feel for that kind of a price target. You know, Cathy Wood from ARK Invest thinks it's going to go to 500K and says that that's her conservative target. My conservative target would actually be that same number, but my more aggressive target would be $1 million, and I have actually even a more aggressive target than that. But please do hear me out. In this video, I also want to go over a very, very, very important detail in Bitcoin that it's troubling that everybody doesn't know about this detail, but I hope it is enlightening when you do find it out in this video. It has to do with the exchanges changing a very simple thing that would really affect the overall marketplace for Bitcoin. We're going to go over that in the video as well. So first, $1 million Bitcoin, how do you get there? Well, let's just break it down really quick. There is roughly $900 trillion in the global financial assets of the world. So global financial assets is roughly $900 trillion. When you think of that, you're talking about real estate, equities, just everything. All global financial assets, they say is roughly $900 trillion. I would argue that it's a lot more than that, but we'll use that very broad figure of $900 trillion. You start there. Then you realize, okay, what is the only digital? Well, let me back it up. 92%, the dollar is the reserve currency of the world, and 93% roughly is already digital. So when people talk about cashless society and all of this, really already is a digital world pretty much. Well over 90% is already digital when it comes to dollars being used. So knowing that, what is the only digital asset with a finite fixed supply that's around, that's adopted, that other institutions have been buying? There's only one. Bitcoin is the only one. There's others that are trying to be Bitcoin, but none of them have the same fixed cap and have the testing on the marketplace. So you have roughly, around 13 years of test trial with Bitcoin. Keep in mind, fiat currency has only been around for 50 years. So it started in 1971 when Nixon dropped off the gold standard, and that's what created the fiat currency situation that we're in. So when you know that and you realize, wait, the only possible way for a universal digital asset is Bitcoin. So when you're talking about global financial assets, what is the only global digital asset that's decentralized? It's Bitcoin. So knowing that, there's a large amount of institutions, Tesla's one of them, and we just heard this new little conference he did with Jack Dorsey, and it seems that Elon Musk says he's not selling his Bitcoin now. So that's interesting, but there's way more institutions that are now buying Bitcoin. Michael Saylor is one of them who holds quite a bit of Bitcoin, quite a bit more than Tesla does. But if more companies put 1 to 5% of their treasury into Bitcoin, you would see this growing more and more momentum. But the point is they already are doing this. So to think of that 900 trillion, that a couple percentages of that could be captured by Bitcoin isn't exactly a long shot. So let's break it down. You have 900 trillion in the global financial assets. What's 10% of that? 10% of that is 90 trillion. What's 5% of that? 45 trillion. Right? Now let's get to what's 2.5%. 22.5 trillion. So 2.5%, just a small 2.5% of the global financial assets is roughly 22.5 trillion. 2.5%. For Bitcoin to get to 1 million, it would need a $21 trillion market cap. It's that simple. And that would actually give, if it got 2.5% of the global financial assets, then you would be a little bit above 1 million actually, because it'd be 22.5 trillion. And I think the global financial assets, I think there's a lot more out there. That's just kind of a rough figure that we're told. But the truth is the dollars, they're never going to stop printing. They're going to keep printing and keep printing and keep printing because it's a game of kicking the can down the road for the Fed. And so if you're in that global financial asset space and you're thinking, okay, where do we park our money? And better yet, are other countries going to want to continue to sell their oil for dollars if they're printing it at this level, or are they going to want to sell it for something else? Or are they going to trade it for something else? If we have gold already and we're not back to a gold standard, there's going to be a digital layer. There has to be a digital layer because more than 90% of the worldwide monetary supply is already digital. So you already have pretty much a cashless society at this point. So you're going to need a digital layer, a digital asset. And what is better than a digital asset that has no country, no leader, no company, nothing? It's just completely decentralized in every way, shape, and form, with a finite 21 million supply that isn't changing and never can change. It just is what it is. You would think that a lot of that money that is there, or a very small sliver, like 2.5%, would want to go into Bitcoin. So that's my little breakdown there on how it could get to 1 million. I just wanted to go over the rough figures, and it's kind of an eye-opening moment when you realize the actual numbers there. And it also shows you just how undervalued silver is, and platinum and palladium. Gold is up there at 12 trillion. And so you think about what Bitcoin does for everyone in the digital realm is incredible. And you would have to be, it doesn't make much sense to think that none of the money of the global financial assets is going to go into Bitcoin. That just wouldn't make any sense. So if a small sliver goes in, you realize when you go through those numbers just how fast that number can move. And that doesn't take into account, so for Michael Saylor, for example, took debt against his company to buy more Bitcoin. This 900 trillion figure doesn't take that into account. So there's a lot of other ways of buying more and more Bitcoin than just this. This is just a rough breakdown. I think you could get a lot higher than that if that kind of money comes in from the global financial assets. So that being said, the next thing I want to talk about is the network. The network is already over 100 million users on Bitcoin. So when people say, oh, well, another Bitcoin could pop out, tomorrow, good luck. One has a really large head start and it's already made perfect. You have well over 10 years of test trial, and throughout that time, it's been tested time and time again. Are you going to just trust one that comes out of nowhere? Doesn't make much sense. The value comes in that network, the network effect of 100 million users that know Bitcoin and know how to use Bitcoin. Is a huge, huge deal. And I think it's very underestimated just how far of a head start Bitcoin has. Those are the main ways that I think, in a very kind of broad figure, I like to simplify things. I don't want to get into too much of the complexities of it, but I hope that kind of is a bit of a eye-opening amount of information there on how Bitcoin can really move. And we're talking about $1 million Bitcoin. For $100,000 Bitcoin, you need just a tiny sliver of money from the global financial assets to go into Bitcoin. And it's like, it only makes so much sense. Even as just an insurance play, because if it goes to the moon, you're gonna feel pretty smart about it. And if you put only 1% of your balance sheet in Bitcoin and it fails and goes to zero, well, you're not really in that bad a shape. So it just seems like more and more institutions are going to do the same thing that Tesla, that MicroStrategy, and all these other companies buying Bitcoin are doing. And it's happening at a very fast pace. I would imagine there was a lot of buy orders when it fell under 30 recently, because it seemed to fall under 30, go to 29, and then shoot right back up to 32,000. But that's more of the technical stuff. I like to go over a little bit more of the macro view. Now, for one of the biggest points on Bitcoin that I think is being so wildly overlooked, and I really wanted to get this point out there, and I hope that this is something that's worth sharing for you. So please post in a comment down below if you agree with me on this, that all exchanges need to change from showing the Bitcoin and the Bitcoin only price, switching that to default as Satoshi. I get this question from precious metal stackers all the time. And as you all know, I like precious metals. I like specifically precious metals with utility: silver, gold, silver, platinum, palladium. Those are my favorites. But I get the same question from the precious metals community, and it's like, it's bothering me that people think you need to buy a full Bitcoin. They're like, oh, I really missed the train on that one. I wish I could have bought it in the hundreds. Now I don't have 30,000 to buy a Bitcoin. A lot of people watching this video think, oh yeah, that's not many people think that. You would be surprised how many times I get asked, can I buy a fractional amount of Bitcoin? So knowing that, And knowing that these altcoins are using that to their advantage to let these inflationary coins that are pretty much just tokens compete with Bitcoin, I think that is something. If these exchanges are Bitcoin, friendly exchanges, they should make it a fair, field and let people know more about Bitcoin. When you buy a Dogecoin, this is one thing that always bothered me. I guess how could I back it up to make it make more sense here? Here we go. So Tesla recently did a 5-to-1 stock split. Now, if you look on your iPhone and you just pull up the regular stock chart that we all look at, right? They actually don't show that split. They don't show that dilution, which is wild. They did a secondary at Tesla right before they did a 5-to-1 split. So I had somebody that recently told me like, oh yeah, Tesla's only like 600 something a share. Wasn't it like 300, 200? That's not that big of, I don't understand it went up a good amount, but I mean, 100% isn't really worth all that media and everything I saw with Tesla. No. On the chart for some reason, which I think is just ridiculous that they don't put it in the chart, like make the chart change, like all of those numbers need to shift. If it was 300 and then it went to, 3,000 and they do a 5-to-1 split, they shouldn't be able to keep it at 300 and then drop the price down to 600 like they do, if that makes sense. So even though it went from 300 to 3,000, they did a 5-to-1 split and you only see 600 a share. But they don't show that it did that. If they did show the truth, they would show that it wasn't 300 relative to the 600, but they just keep it all in line. It's absolutely mind-boggling. I had compared Bitcoin to Apple in like 2007 to 2010, and I pulled up the charts in one of my videos, and they're like, actually, that's not even adjusting for the splits. It's up way more than that. So that's just like a ridiculous, almost manipulation on the mind on how this all operates. And I want to relate that to Bitcoin against these altcoins. So when you're looking at Tesla stock and you go, wait a minute, 600 isn't that far from 300. What really happened with Tesla is they did a secondary. They got to 3,000, did a secondary, diluted their shares. And at the same time, they did a 5-to-1 split to kind of hide that they diluted their shares with the secondary, which was really like the timing was impeccable. Fantastic job over there, diluting the shares on the shareholders. But they did a 5-to-1 split, dropped the price from 3,000 to 600. And then that's what you see. And so the mind is thinking to yourself, 3,000 is a little too much. I can't afford that. It's incredible what this difference does to the psyche. Same thing with Apple. Apple did a 7-to-1 split. And that's why you see such a low price for Apple. And you think to yourself, $100, $200, it's not that much money for Apple. What people need to understand is these dilution events or these splits are there to kind of trick your mindset into thinking, I can afford more of it now. And you would think it doesn't work. You'd think more people would look into the market cap and look into what the split was and all of that, but they don't. They don't. As a statistical basis, it helps every time the stock does a split like that. It helps it go up. I mean, look at Tesla. It kept all of those gains, but would it have kept those gains if it stayed at 3,000? If it just stayed there at 3,000, people would look at it like they look at Bitcoin and go, I really think I missed the train on that. I don't know. But this is something I want to talk about with Bitcoin now. So that's kind of the overview on how I can relate my point on satoshis with Bitcoin. I am making the argument that all exchanges need to change from default showing the full Bitcoin price, what one Bitcoin costs, to satoshis at this point to prove that this really is the people's asset. It has to show this. And you know who's the first one that I've seen do this is Cash App. Cash App, and I'm not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. But their workflow is brilliant. I think it's really hard to get the Bitcoin out of Cash App, which is a very annoying thing to take custody of your Bitcoin, but we can talk about that at another time. But one thing is they're allowing you to denominate your Bitcoin into Satoshi. So for the Dogecoin community who happen to often be, kind of new to cryptocurrency and use Dogecoin as an on-ramp to learn that Bitcoin is actually the one you want to hold. Not financial advice. This channel is not for financial advice, but this detail here will kind of be an eye-opener. So the circulating supply of Bitcoin is 18,763,000. So 18 million, getting closer to 19 million Bitcoin, caps at 21 million Bitcoin. Ethereum is 116 million Ethereum, right? 116, almost 117 million Ethereum compared to not even 19 million Bitcoin. So that's how many more Ethereum are out there. But a lot of people will look at Ethereum's price and go, oh, it's only 2,000. It's only 2,000. I can afford that. But when you look at it from the basis of how diluted the circulating supply is and how that continues to be diluted, you go, oh, okay, well, there's actually quite a bit more of those out there. And I don't see people denominating Ether into Satoshis like you can with Bitcoin. Same thing with Dogecoin. Do they call them Shibus or something, or Shibas? How do you denominate Dogecoin? Here's the difference. People look at Dogecoin and they go, oh, well, it's so cheap. It's the people's money. It's just a few pennies. No, it's not. Because it's look at the circulating supply. I look at the circulating supply over here, and let's go down to Dogecoin. The circulating supply of Dogecoin is 130,538,000,000 Dogecoin. It's a token, an inflationary token with $130 billion supply. Do you think the global financial assets of 900 trillion, roughly, are going to want to put their money in something called Dogecoin with 130 billion that is allowed to be inflationary when they are trying to get away from the problem, which is the inflation of the dollar and how much the dollar is able to dilute? They don't want to go into a token. But what blows my mind is this idea that this is the people's money because Dogecoin is only 18 cents, quite a bit down from the 70-something cent high. But who knows what happens with Dogecoin? And what I've noticed with Dogecoin, the only good that I've seen from it is people are using it and they learn about what it's like to be a libertarian, what the money supply used to be like. They learn about the gold standard when they never would have learned about that. So Dogecoin, you do have to respect that aspect of the Dogecoin community, learning about this information, and that is a net positive in my opinion. But what's unfair in this situation is that people are not looking at the circulating supply of Dogecoin, and they would realize, wait a minute, 130 billion? Whoa, I want to be in the thing that only has 21 million and never can change. There are no leaders. There are no developer teams. The only thing they can do on Bitcoin is be a developer team in the next layer, which is why Lightning is now out. And we're going to talk about that in another video. But Lightning has been freeing up demand in layer 1, which is just traditional Bitcoin. But Lightning is freeing up layer 1. But the one thing I want to really talk about with Bitcoin, the main point here is that all exchanges need to be denominating Bitcoin in Satoshis. I think it's something that they should be doing as default. So when you look and you see Bitcoin, you should see it at number 1, and you should see it in Satoshis. To put it into perspective here, because Bitcoin can be denominated in Satoshis, it's basically the cents equivalent to the dollar, right? But it actually even divides even further. When people think, that's why I just get so bothered how many times I've been asked, can you buy fractional amounts of Bitcoin? And it's like, oh my, really? Really? You think this? And it's like, it's because there is this misconception. And I think that if all exchanges change to Satoshi as default, and then you had the option to click to see the exact price of Bitcoin, or if you saw it in the corner, but it showed Satoshi as default, because this is how you know it's really the real people's asset, and Dogecoin is just an imposter. And I'm sorry to the Dogecoin community, but 130 billion on the supply, you need to use Lightning Network a little bit. And people say, oh, Bitcoin's too slow. It's this, and that. Have they actually played with Bitcoin from a cold storage and sent it on a cold storage? Because I happened to move tens of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin from one wallet to another wallet just last night for $1. And it took minutes. I believe it was like 3 or 4 minutes to move tens of thousands of dollars worth of Bitcoin to the other wallet on the Bitcoin network. It doesn't take that long. It's like a wire transfer, but we're going to get into that into a different video. This is the last point I really want to drive home, is that when you denominate in Satoshis, there are 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. To put that into even more perspective, there are per million Satoshis. So let me pull this up here just to get the exact price. Per million Satoshis, it costs $319 for a million Satoshis. So that kind of changes the mindset there. How much does it cost for 1 million Dogecoin, right? Because that's the people's money, and that's why Dogecoin is so big. It's just got that low price. But when you denominate, it's almost like these cypherpunks back when Bitcoin was first came out. It's almost like they thought about this, that you start as full Bitcoin, and then the world realizes, oh wait, you can denominate it in satoshis. It's just such a eye-opener, and you realize, wait a minute, this is really affordable when you denominate it in satoshis, and you can now have more feeling of ownership than just chipping away at your first full coin. Because let's be honest, the average person can't afford a full coin, and it's a painful thing to look at something and go, oh wow, it's 30,000, but nobody's taking into account the circulating supplies and how much that affects things. Bitcoin would be cheap. It would be far cheap for one Bitcoin if there was 130 billion of them. And that's what Dogecoin takes advantage of. So you have to look at the market cap, and you have to look at how many tokens are out there. I call Dogecoin a token. Bitcoin, I believe, is a crypto asset, which is far different. Not able to inflate. No amount can be added to the circulating supply. It will end at 21 million. However, it can be denominated in satoshis, which I believe it is totally wrong that all the exchanges don't immediately shift to satoshis, so everybody understands that you can own fractional amounts of Bitcoin. As crazy as it sounds, there's a reason why the stock market does 5-to-1, 7-to-1, 10-to-1 splits. They do it to trick people, to think that it is less expensive. But you know what? The market cap doesn't change. The only thing that changed is the circulating supply. And they usually do it right after they do a secondary. Tricky. That's what they do. And that's what they did with Tesla. They did a secondary, scooped up the free money from the shareholders, and then what do they do with that money? They go and they buy Bitcoin with it. But right after they did that, to kind of conceal it, they did the 5-to-1 split. And now you look at the stock, you go, 600, it's not that bad. But if you looked at it at 3,000, if you multiplied it by 5, which is where it was supposed to be, you'd have a different feeling about it. And that is something that I think is totally wrong, that these exchanges are not doing that for Bitcoin to show that this is denominated in satoshis. If you are lucky enough to get to a full coin, then that is amazing. But that should be the goal. That should be what everybody is working towards. In the community, everybody says stack sats. We're going to try to stack sats. They don't say stack coins. They're saying stack sats because they're trying to chip away at that first full coin. And that first full coin, it feels a lot better when you buy 10 million satoshis. You say, hey, I bought 10 million satoshis, right? And that's actually only 3,192. Makes a lot more sense. 100 million satoshis is a full coin. So then when people realize, wait, I can get there from, if I buy 1 million satoshis, then I buy another million satoshis and another million satoshis and another. If I get to 100, I'll have a full coin. Just makes it so much more realistic, and it completely eliminates that thought process that can you have fractional amounts of Bitcoin. Now, the first thing, the reason I wanted to talk about that second after going over the actual full details of what it would take and how it could get there to 1 million a coin, I want to talk about that after, because I don't want to just say that's the only reason, because I don't want to be like, the Tesla stock splits and stuff tricking people. I think that it's just blatantly unjust in a way that people feel that they need to buy a full coin at a time. Now, obviously, I know otherwise. You probably know otherwise. But as a whole, a lot of people are still learning about Bitcoin, and it's an eyesore to see, 32,000. I can't afford 32,000. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go buy this, and that. And that is probably why a lot of money goes into altcoins, because they didn't learn about the hard cap. They didn't learn that about the supply of these coins on the market. So that's the video. That's everything I wanted to talk about. Really hope that was a worthwhile video for you. I have a tendency to rant and ramble in these videos, but if you did find it worthwhile, would really appreciate you smashing that like button and clicking subscribe. Would love to have you as part of this channel. There should be a subscribe button somewhere around here and another click to one of my other videos if you want to watch some more videos on the channel. Would love to hear your perspective on this topic as well. So if you could please post a comment down below. Would love to hear from you. There's always a lot of great information in the comments, and I'm always learning new stuff every day from them as well. See you at the next video. Signing out.